Jeannie, you ready to go?
I'm ready. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Okay, so John Vandergast, my good friend, partner, and cohort in crime, Jeannie Osnes. We're your instructors for Coaching Skills Camp. We have it coming up here at the end of the May. And I don't usually put a the in front of the month. Just happened that one time. We're going to start with a coaching example. And we'd like for you to observe what you see. Maybe take a note or two about anything that you notice. We're going to jump straight at some coaching. And it's going to be the basis for what we do today. So you guys good with that? We'll ask you to share your observations here in just a moment about what you noticed. Okay, Jeannie, you ready to do some clienting?
I'm ready, boss. Let's go.
All right, let's do this. Okay, so Jeannie, what's one thing in your life that you want that you don't currently have?
I'd like to have deeper key relationships
And specifically, what do you mean by key relationships?
with my kids. It's easy to have great relationships with the ones in town, but they're spread all over the country. And I don't have the kind of relationships or the interactions with them that I'd like to have.
And is that with multiple kids or maybe a specific kid?
There's 3 of them. I have one that's doing better, but 2 of them that it just falls off the radar and I rarely connect with.
So are we talking about all 3 or are we talking about really these 2?
No, I'd like to talk about all 3.
Okay, and what are their names? First names only?
Brittany,
Brittany?
Crystal, and Matt.
Okay. And when you say closer relationships with Brittany, Crystal, and Matt, where are they now? How would you rate the closeness as it currently stands?
Well, Brittany, I just got back from a week vacation with her and her family. So it's kind of like re-engaged that relationship. Crystal and Matt, we have a good relationship, and we're not taking the time to slow down and talk to each other, call each other, talk to the grandkids. It's just, that out of sight, out of mind. It's really easy, even if it's your own children.
So with Crystal and Matt, especially, what's important about this for you? Why is this something that you want to change?
Because these are kids of divorce with lots of step parents involved and stuff, and I am still the one that they are the closest to. And I just don't feel like I'm involved in knowing their kids' lives, their activities, what they're doing. I mean, just spent time with Brittany and her kids, and it was so great to re-engage with them and play with them and talk to my oldest grandson about maybe going to Duke and visiting the university with him. And I miss that connection with them, and they told me that they miss it with me. And so I'm assuming that Matt and Crystal would be the same. And when I do reach out to them, they're thrilled to hear from me. And it's just not happening.
Jeannie, when you say you're missing connection, what does it feel like to be missing connection with your children?
It feels like a gaping emotional hole.
And yet the flip side, when this is different, what will that feel like instead?
It will, I coach so much to life by design, and this is one area that I realize I'm actually not doing that. And it will just feel like not only am I in integrity with myself, but it's just, I'm at the base of, I've been a mother for over 40 years. So that's part of my identity, who I am. And I just feel like that will feel more whole or wholesome again when I can re-engage with them at a higher level.
So what I heard you say is, if you're going to be in integrity with yourself, this is who you are, this is your identity, and this is what you need to be whole with yourself. Is that right?
That's right. And, I asked a coaching question the other day, are you becoming the parent that you want your kids to be? And then I thought, well, gosh, am I being the parent that I want my kids to be? So I have a big problem when I find myself out of integrity.
So up to this point, what stopped you from having these substantive relationships with Brittany, Crystal, and Matt?
Oh, there's not even a good excuse for it. It's just out of sight, out of mind. I'm busy. I'll call tomorrow. I saw what they did on Facebook. I don't need to update right now. They're probably too busy to talk to me. Just lots of really just poor excuses.
Well, you could certainly judge yourself for not doing it, but the good news is that it seems like they're relatively easy problems to fix, yes?
They are relatively easy, and I'm doing a really good job judging myself.
Okay.
I'm beating myself up over it, and that's ridiculous.
Jeannie, this is why coaches have coaches too, okay?
That's right.
So the obstacles that have stopped you from having this relationship, or how, if you could say it in a word or two, how would you describe it?
Not being intentional with my time.
Okay, not being intentional.
Mhm.
So if we flip the script on that and said, being intentional, what are some of the most simple foundational things that you could do that you could start by and changing this paradigm?
Reach out to them and schedule a FaceTime with them and their kids.
How frequently?
Let's start with once a month.
And this is for all three families?
Yes.
How can I help you be accountable to this?
I don't want to give you a job like, oh, check in with me. And I think that if I knew that you were expecting to hear from me, that I've followed through with this commitment, that would be the accountability piece.
Okay, so how about we touch back a month, which would be, what is that, June 3rd?
Mhm.
And I'll see you before June 3rd because we happen to be teaching coaching skills camp together.
That's
on the
right.
25th. However, though, at May 25th, I'll remind you that I'll be talking to you on June 3rd to see if you follow through with what you said to the group today.
That'd be great.
Great. Okay, group. What'd you get out of that conversation? What did you hear? What did you notice? What did you observe? It's all fair game. Please be pretty concise with your comments, but go ahead and take yourself off mute and just go.
That you kept you always had a follow-up question to whatever she answered. You kept going deeper and deeper and deeper with her.
Good, Tina. Good observation. And you said follow up.
A follow-up question. You had a question for every answer. You had a follow-up question that kind of related back to whatever she answered. You just kept taking her down the path till she got to her solution.
Tina, by contrast, how many statements did I make to Jeannie?
I don't know. I just kept writing. He asked a question. I was counting the questions more than the statements, but not many. If maybe one or two, if any.
Maybe. Okay, good.
You use the same words that she used.
Yeah,
But you asked about her kids' names and used the kids' names throughout the questions.
Mhm.
And what was significant about that for you?
Well, it shows that you're listening and it helps build rapport, and it feels more personal because you're using the same language that she's using.
Great observations. Good. Who else?
Yeah, I was going to agree. You had your mirror back statement was excellent to clarify for understanding, and to just echo what was just said was that would let that client know that you were paying attention, you were listening to what they were saying.
Yeah, good observation, Art, right?
Yeah, I felt that there was empathy in there when you came back saying this is why coaches need coaches. So I felt the empathy, which I felt was important and which I feel sometimes is missing, right, in coaching. But by you repeating and affirming, she felt heard.
Mhm.
And I think that was an important to her, which allowed for her to open up and that trust to be there.
Great observations, all of you. Maybe one or two more and then we'll move on.
And you,
One thing
noticed
that
that
I
you
picked
helped
up
her.
on was as you drilled down, so in a sense, you kind of took her underwater. And then on the fix is you brought her back to the surface. And so you drilled down, I guess you'd say, on what the issues are, and then brought her back. Okay, let's go back to the surface. Here's how we move forward.
Mhm.
And
Good.
I noticed that you helped her, although she feels really bad about the situation, you helped her self-discover that It's really a simple fix, and that it's just going to be a matter of, and then you helped her put, kind of map out what she could do next for that fix.
Jeannie, what was this like for you? I mean, this is not a role play. This is a real play, right?
Yeah, this is a real play. You know, as we went through the process, there's nothing that I didn't already know that I needed to do. And so what I realized as we were going through this, the only piece that I was missing was the accountability piece. And we kid ourselves all the time that we can hold ourselves accountable.
Mhm. Yeah, we could spend a day on that concept. As you remember, I know, do you still work with Susan Arant at all, Jeannie?
No, not right now.
Okay.
But I
So-
talk to her a lot.
Yeah, Jeannie used to coach Susan Arant, Jean's wife, for a long time, and I'm pretty friendly with Jean being here in Austin. And after Jean had taken bold 13 times, I asked him one time, I said, Jean, why is it that you heard this content over and over again? I said, why is it that you continue to take bold? He says, because I don't want to be the guy in the room that stands up and say I didn't do my homework. I put myself in that environment because it causes me to do the things that I know I need to do. That's pure wisdom right there, what Jeannie just said and what Jean said to echo it, right? Smart people put themselves into accountable relationships that cause them to do the things that they already know they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
It's good. Okay, good. All right, how would you guys feel about learning the model that conversation was based on? Some of you may already know this, but maybe reviewing it through a different lens. Does that sound like it would be helpful? Jeannie, why don't you walk us through the GROW model?
All right. So what John just took us through was actually one of the most important models that we have in MAPS coaching, which is called the GROW model. So GROW is just the acronym for G is the goal, R is the reality of the situation. What was the goal? What's the reality? Where are we? O is going to be for obstacles, or sometimes we call it opportunity. And then the W is the will or the way forward. And it's just that simple, is taking them through these steps to get clarity. And one of the questions that John, you asked that I thought was so good is, how many statements did you make? I don't think you made any. And the job of the coach is to help the client to self-discover what is their goal, what is the reality, what's getting in the way, and what's going to help them to actually move forward. So it's a very simple model, and yet there's different ways that we can take it really deep and master this and be able to have pretty significant impact on the person's life as we help them to self-discover.
Okay. So if everybody would just make a note about this, maybe copy this graphic down, or just make a mental note of it. Writing it out might help. We're going to go off of this so we can come back to some things that we'd like to teach you about it. We'll give you a couple of seconds to get it down.
Okay, looks like they got it, John.
Okay, cool. As you guys know, the GROW model is absolutely one of the most relevant and universal models in coaching. The lovely thing about this model is it's usable in practically every format for coaching, including business coaching, transformational coaching, leadership coaching, transitional coaching, health coaching, relationship coaching, which you just heard. You name it, the model works. It's predicated on a very simple idea. Somebody wants something that they don't currently have. It could be a net profit number. It could be a number of closings. It could be a number of team members. It could be a certain body mass index. It doesn't matter what it is. The difference, though, between where a person is and where they want to be is what we'll get to in just a little bit more, is what we call the gap. In coaching, we call that the gap. So one thing that's very interesting about this model is it scales up, and it also scales or chunks down. So it can get very broad, meaning why does somebody get into a coaching relationship? But it can also be very specific. Like, I'm missing some relationship with 3 of my 7 children. All right. So if a person works with a coach, they typically want to work with a coach for a reason. It's a pretty general assumption, yet one of the coach's jobs, the coach's primary job, is to help the client get what they want that they don't currently have, and to structure the conversation in a way that causes them to structure the conversation in a way that causes them to get clarity on what needs to change. All right. So if every coaching session, it's a very simple idea. If every coaching session with a client or a team member takes one step in the right direction towards what the client wants, eventually the client's goals will be realized. Jeannie, will you walk us through the acronym itself?
Sure. So let's just, again, the GROW stands for goal, reality, obstacle or opportunity, and the will or the way forward. So the goal is, it's really simple. It's like John just said, is what does the client want? And this, again, can be business, personal, non-business, like mine was just a personal thing in one of my 7 circles of key relationships. So what is, or what was your goal is one of the first things that we need to make sure that we get clarity on. What was the goal this week? What was the goal? What is the thing that's missing in your life? And then what's important that you achieve, or what is it that you actually want? It's just that simple with the R, or I'm sorry, with the G, is figuring out what is the goal or what is that missing thing, so that we know that we're focused on the right thing throughout this conversation. And then, John, I'll take the R and then let you jump in with the O. Is that all right with you?
Perfect.
All right, so the R is just the reality of the situation. It's the client's current reality, or where they are right now. So I had a goal. It was to make a certain amount of contacts. So we're just going to ask questions to get to reality, so that the client is clear on the reality of the situation. So you might ask things like, well, how did you do? If that was your goal, where are you now? Or what's your actual progress to that goal? So there's lots of different ways that you can just get the reality of from what your goal is. Okay, well, that's your goal. Where are we? So lots of different ways to ask that question, just so that everybody's clear on the reality of the current situation. John, take us to the O.
Yeah, I mean, Jeannie and I think both of us like to camp out in the O. We spend a lot of time on this at CSC. That there are while there are certain categories for obstacles, identification of the obstacle and resolution of the obstacle for the client really becomes where great coaches learn great tools and they go deep in skill sets here. So the resolution or identification and resolution of the obstacles, I believe, is really where the art of coaching actually is. Sometimes you'll see it called the opportunity. And this is just a little linguistic trick. It's like a little linguistic reframe to call something an opportunity as opposed to an obstacle, because it just gives us a different, more positive, empowered perception of the obstacle. Some people hear the word obstacle and they become deflated or disempowered, or other people will hear the word obstacle and they like, oh, good, I got a challenge. Opportunity kind of makes it so that it's more universally positively regarded, if that makes sense. Some of the questions around obstacle. What's keeping you from hitting your goal? What stopped you up to this point? What do we have the opportunity to overcome? I'm thinking about Emily on this call, who just spoke a moment ago. She's part of a very, very good real estate team. And this team's been working very, very strongly over the last year on their held to sign conversion. And we're talking about an 800 unit team here. So these guys have gotten smarter and smarter about identifying their obstacle. And when the obstacle is clear, the will or the way forward also becomes very clear. Really understanding the obstacle, the solution usually presents itself pretty quickly. Jeannie, why don't you talk to us about will or way forward?
Well, the will or the way forward. Well, let me just park really, really quickly on something that you were saying, John, that made me think. This is great coaching model, and this is also a great coaching model to help not only people on your team, but also maybe your buyers or your sellers that are kind of getting in their own way. The seller, what do you actually want in the end? What is your goal? Is it to not pay 6%, or is it to put as much money possibly in your pocket? So let's figure out what is the goal, and what we're doing is helping the client to turn the beach ball and maybe look at it a little bit differently than they have before. So what's the reality of that? What are the opportunities? What can we do here to move you toward that goal? What's getting in the way of that?
Yeah.
And then,
I'm sorry, Gene, let me just put another tag on that before you go on, if you don't mind. I know you and I are both working with a lot of team leaders and brokerages right now in market centers. And we're really head on addressing how can the market center staff increase the value to its existing agent group. And the number one thing that the team leaders that I've been working with have been doing is they've just been going and asking 4 simple grow model questions of their top 20% in their market centers. And it's leading to much deeper conversations and keeping that sense of value of why I joined Keller Williams and why I should continue to stay here. So the team leaders knowing these models is a huge, huge impact for our market centers. Sorry to interrupt, but thank you for letting me get that in.
yeah, absolutely. Well, the W again is for the will or the way forward. And this is the final portion of the grow model. And this is where the client chooses the changing to their thinking, to their activities, to their skill set that will actually cause them to hit goal. So it's not always just an activity that, oh, if I do this, then this will happen. Sometimes it's a mindset. It's the way that they're looking at things. It's the stories that they're making up in their head about things that they need to get realignment on. So a couple of questions around that. So now are you clear? What is your next step? Another question might be, what does progress between now and our next conversation look like? What specifically will you accomplish and by when? What specifically will you change, or even what will you adjust so that you make the progress? What would you add to that, John?
Those are just such good questions. It's got me thinking about all the gaps. I mean, this is such a beautiful conversation, such a human conversation. These questions cause us to think about our own things that we want. We think about the ability to now serve other people. We can impact a team. We can impact a brokerage. We can impact a one-on-one relationship with people that we know. It's just such a foundational thing. That's why for our CSC sneak peek, this is like, there's nothing else to talk about before we talk about this.
Well, and the other thing that, that just made me think about, John, is that in Coaches Skills Camp, we teach lots of models that can actually be used while in the grow model. So when you get to obstacle, you might switch over to a different model for a bit so that they can get clear on the obstacles or the opportunities, and then come back and wrap it up with the W in the grow model.
Yep. I mean, you mentioned the categories for obstacles before around thinking, skill set, activity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what if the activities that were going to lead us to goal were the wrong activities? The grow model would reveal that. What if we were doing the activities yet we weren't doing them well enough to get the result? The grow model would reveal that, right? What if the way that we were thinking about taking a listing, for instance, was the thing that was in the way of us taking a listing? The grow model it beautifully resolves all of those things.
That's right. Yeah, I actually used the grow model on a coaching call this morning, and what we found was that the obstacle that she was running into is the story she was making up about lead generation. So changing the mindset actually allowed her to get excited about getting back on the phone again.
Yeah. And to your point, the story model, which we do cover in CSC, is one of the mindset obstacle. Remember I said identification of it and then resolution of it? The story model helps with both the identification as well as the resolution. So somebody comes out with a different story, they have a different reality, and they get a different result because of that.
That's right. So John, about 5 minutes left. Yeah, we could go on for like an hour and a half on this one. So we got about 5 minutes left. Should we take some comments or questions here?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's open it up.
Yeah, do a hand raise so that we can call on you one at a time. Anybody that's got one. Okay.
Lauren,
I see
let's see what you got to say.
I like the way you closed at the end with her own personal situation. And you didn't really take no for an answer, but you were gentle about it. And that's the way to go.
Yeah, a common mistake about accountability is saying, well, how can I hold you accountable?
That's right.
versus how can I help you to be accountable?
Yeah.
Right. Great observation, Lauren.
Right. Heather.
My question was, when you're speaking and using this model or the others, are they aware at your coaching client that this is what you're doing? Or is this just your path? For instance, are you saying we're going to talk about the reality, we're going to talk about the obstacles? Are you kind of showing them the actual model and working that way? Or are you just that's just the order you're having the conversations?
Yeah, I'll take that one, John. So I never say, okay, now we're going to go through a model together now, because that also can be a distractor. And now they're thinking too much about, oh, what are the steps in this? And so now I'm also not hiding the fact. I mean, I always ask all of my clients to go through coaching skills camp. And when they do, they go, oh, now I see what you're doing when we're on our calls together. But keeping them focused and anything that might distract them, I want to stay away from. So I don't say, let's go through your goal and your reality and your obstacles. I just walk them through the process.
That's right. Jeannie, when you test drive a car, do you want to learn every part of how the car works, or do you just want to experience the car?
I just want to experience the car. That's right. Good. All right. Who we got? Chris.
Chris. Hi, Chris.
Hi, thank you. Question I have is, I struggle in the beginning sometimes of a conversation with a client in getting agreement, because they don't know and they're bouncing all over the place. And so I invest too much time trying to get them to figure out, okay, what is the one thing that's most important to you today? How do you rein them in, or what different kinds of questions do you ask to get them to identify what's most important?
Let me take that one, Jeannie. Chris, I actually would suggest that you get into more of a ritual with your client about preparing before the call. So that if you, one of the nice things about, we talk about this in CSC, I'm only going to touch on it right now, is that by having the client really think about the call before the call, it causes the client to take self-leadership and self-responsibility for value in the coaching relationship. So Chris, what you might ask is, hey, before we begin our session, maybe you send this out in your email reminder. If we were to accomplish one thing on our call together, what would it be? And then have the client do the heavy lifting prior to the call. So now you're not wasting that valuable time together at the beginning, working on getting focus. Thoughts?
The only thing I would add to that, and I think you're spot on there, John, is that every call, Chris, should end with the action items for the week. And with the understanding that one of the first things we're going to do when we get back on the call next week is I'm going to ask you about your action items. So that's part of that rhythm that we're getting into, so that we're not just having an update on what happened to you this week. So it's every call is moving us more and more and more toward the goal. And it's okay to pattern interrupt sometime and just say, hang on just a second. We kind of feel like we're bouncing all over the place. At least that's my perception.
Yep.
What is the one thing that we focused on today toward about your goal that would make everything else easier or unnecessary? Sometimes a pattern interrupt is the greatest gift that you can actually give to the client.
I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Great question. We got time for one more, I think, John. So anybody else speak up or raise your hand?
I want to know what Cam's thinking about. Cam's a stud. I like this guy a lot. Cam, what do you get out of this conversation?
Oh, I knew you were going to call me out, John. No, this is awesome. I love the example in the beginning that you were going through. And even what I wrote down in my biggest aha for the day is just in a few words, what stopped you, like that obstacle, but then you turned it into an opportunity. And so you were using obstacle and opportunity there. Like, let's flip the script. How could you do the exact opposite of what you just said? And it was a very simple way for her to identify her obstacle, identify some opportunities, and then that was a very clear way for her to move forward. I love it.
I love that you said that. And I want to make sure everybody picked up when John said, what stopped you? There was no tonality of judgment. It was just a question, a curiosity question. Because he could have said, well, what stopped you? Right? But just what stopped you?
What stopped you, stupid?
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
That's not a good coaching question.
Glad you're not my mom, right? Great.
Yeah, that's
All
fine.
right, well, I did put in there the link for coaching skills camp that's coming up May 25th, 26th in Austin. Registration is open now, or you can share that registration link with anybody you'd like to if you want to get registered or know anybody else that would like to as well. John, any last thoughts here?
One thing that I've been asking a lot of my clients and teams recently, and Jeannie and you and I even touched on this before, is how does this thinking show up on your profit and loss statement? Or where is this thinking showing up as a profit and loss statement that you don't want to see?
Mm-hmm.
And I can't stress how much of a great business investment this is for people that really take the time to learn how to do this. How this really can impact, the potential for impact in businesses is huge in terms of the results the business can produce because of the way that you develop people. So if this is something where you have a team or a market center, something like that, I guarantee you will get a strong ROI when you adopt some of these practices into your daily leadership. 100%.
That's right. And Joyce, I saw your question in here. We do have another skills camp coming. I believe it's in September. It's going to be the 28th, 29th, and I believe that registration is open for that one as well. All right, with that, thank you, everyone. Appreciate you being here. I hope you have a great takeaway, and I look forward to seeing a lot of you at Coach's Skills Camp.
Bye, guys. See you soon.
All right, bye. Thank you.